Hi, I'm Will, and welcome back to Will's Digitals, your home for everything Photoshop and composite art. Today's topic is both exciting and somewhat controversial: AI. I'll walk you through some basic uses of AI in Photoshop, as well as discuss my feelings on the use of AI in composite art. But let's start with the fun stuff. Let's start with generative fill. Generative fill can be used in several ways, but the main things I use it for are for correction and addition. Let's start looking at correction. I've got this photo that I shot of some scrub down on South Padre Island in South Texas. I've used this for a background in my piece called House on Keller Hill, where the sand looked enough like snow that I could use it as a base for a winter scene. Let's add in like these little scrub bushes here and would rather it just be sand. Well, that's easy enough to fix. First, let's make sure our contextual taskbar is visible. So we're going to go down here, and it is. If it's not on yours, go to Window, Contextual Taskbar, and put a check by it. This right down here is the contextual taskbar. So now what we need to do is we need to select the scrub bushes that we want to get rid of. And you can use pretty much any selection you want. I would advise against the object selection tool because the AI needs to know what it's trying to match. So if you just select the bushes and nothing else, it doesn't understand there's sand there that it needs to try to match. Okay, so there's our selection. We've got our little marching ants, and we're just going to hit generative fill. And now it comes up with a text box for us to type in what we want. But what we want is for it to remove the junk in the picture and fill it with the background. And it's smart enough to figure that out. So all we have to do is hit generate, and then it will do its thing. And there we go. It's all gone, see? And it actually gives us, as you can see over here, 3 variations. And we can see which one we like best. You can tell they're all a bit different. You know, if we wanted it with the big mounds and stuff, we could go for that. Wanted a little smoother. This one seemed a little darker. So yeah, you know, whatever works. And if we look in the layers panel, what it's done is it's added a layer over our background layer here with the layer mask, with the part that we selected as being visible and the part that we didn't select as being hidden. And then if we look over here, we actually have a layer that has the redone pixels in it. Now, let's say we wanted to get rid of this puddle. Same thing. Take our selection tool and just make a selection. Notice it doesn't have to be too precise. In fact, you want to leave a little bit of the area around whatever it is you want to remove, just like we did with the scrub, so that it knows what it's supposed to look like when it fixes it. All we have to do now that we have it selected, hit generative fill. We don't need to type anything, and we give it just a minute here. And there we go, the puddle's gone. And again, we have 3 selections, and we can choose whichever one we like. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of that layer because so far we've talked about not using this text box. But let's say we're going to act like this is a little duck pond and let's put a duck in it. So how do we do that? Well, let's just make a selection and understand whenever you select something, the bigger the selection, the bigger the object it creates is going to be. So if I give it a giant circle, then we're going to get a giant duck. Anyway, so I've got a small selection here right over the water, and we click generative fill, and let's just say duck and see what happens. Okay, we have some sort of a bird. That looks like a duck. That looks like a swan. Now, when I did this originally, I ended up with 3 that look like a swan, which would have been a great example here. But since I did get a duck, this will seem kind of silly, but you can make this more specific. Let's want a southern wood duck. Notice you can also type into the prompt up here after you've gotten your variations and click generate. And it will keep whatever you searched or whatever you prompted for in your prompt up here in the prompt box, so that all you have to do if you want more is hit it again. Now that looks like the back side of a southern wood duck. There we go. Okay, so this will be a good example. I don't like any of these. That one's the closest one that I like, but let's try them again. And all you have to do if you want 3 more is just hit generate again and it'll do its thing. And don't worry, you don't lose your original 3. You get another 3. That looks, well, a little bit different. I don't understand why that's got a puffy cloud. You know what? Let's try this. See if it can figure this out. Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. I want it to face right. And it does not know it's right from its left at all. So sometimes you get better results than other times. But we'll go with this one, and let's try putting something else in here. Let's right over here, and let's go with southern wood ducklings. It's gonna be a mama duck and her baby ducks. Let's see how this turns out. Nope. Here's also something to understand about AI. I did this a few hours ago, and I got little ducklings. So the same prompt definitely does not result in the same pictures. But let's try, in case it's confused, baby ducklings and see if that helps. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. All right, it gave us baby ducklings with the duck, and then, all right, let's get rid of the southern wood and see what it does there. Well, that's cute. Again, this is AI is not 100% foolproof. I'm going to try doing it over here because that's where I did it before. But I'm going to get rid of the wood ducklings layer, delete layer. And I'm going to try once again. So last time I'm going to try. We'll see what happens. There we go. Now we have ducks. This is kind of what I got the first time. And it's weird that it could do nice ducklings over here and couldn't do them over here. I don't pretend to understand why. But I tell you what, let's move on to something else. Most of the time it does a pretty good job. I'll tell you the one thing it really does badly. If you ever generate humans, hands are horrible. The times that I have used it to generate a human, I usually have to take a picture of my own hand in a specific position and then put that on the what was generated, because it's just horrible. Gnarled up 12 fingers. I've seen everything. It's a horror show. If you want something good to giggle at, I tell you what, try having it create a human. Everything else about the human usually works fairly well. So let's look at something else we can do with AI. Let's have a look at generative expand. If you need your picture to be bigger, then you can use the crop tool, and generative expand will attempt to fill the new area to make it match the scene. So let's give it a shot. First, we're going to select our crop tool, which is over here. And we can select it by either clicking the button, or we can just hit C. There we go. And we have the crop tool. Now let's say we need more foreground. So we're going to just reach down here and grab the handle. Oh, before I grab the handle, notice up here in this drop down, we have a choice of transparent, generative expand, and content aware fill, which is grayed out. You want to make sure it's on generative expand. Otherwise, it's just going to put transparent pixels. Okay, so we're going to go down here and we're going to grab the handle and we'll just drag it down here a little bit to make it a little bit bigger. And we tell it OK by either hitting return or clicking the checkbox. And there's our little generative fill box, just like we had before. And here we have our 3 variations. And we can just pick the one we want. I kind of like that one. And that's really all there is to it. You can come at it from the side. It'll do its thing there. Hit return. And we have 3 choices over on the side. Okay, the one thing I will warn you about is when it generates 1024 by 1024. So in general, if you pick something way bigger than that, it's going to try to stretch it, and that may not look quite right. You can usually go through and with a spot healing brush or something, if you see a line, you can use a spot healing brush and get rid of that. You do want to make sure, though, that it's not a noticeable difference in quality, as in high res versus low res. But most of the time, it does a pretty good job. Okay, so we've talked about getting rid of stuff we don't want from our scene, and we've talked about adding stuff to our scene that wasn't there. But now, what if the scene itself is what we need? We need a background of, I don't know, we need a New York City street. I don't have a shot of a New York City street, and I'm in Texas, so I can't go get one very easily. But let's give this a shot. We're just going to go File, New, and we're going to make this 1024 by 1024, and we'll create that. And then, I'm going to hit Command or Control 0, and that'll make it a full screen so we can see it better. Now, when we did the others where we were removing or adding, we had to select where we wanted it to work. The same applies here. The only difference is we need to select the whole picture because that's what we're wanting as a background. We can easily do that by holding down Command or Control and hitting the A key, which I just did. And now you can notice we have the marching ants all along the edges of the thing. And we still have our generative fill dialog box down here. So let's click generative fill. I'm going to get this up where we can see it a little bit. There we go. Let's say we want a New York City street. Hit return and let's see what it gives us. Okay. Again, understand these are not actual scenes from New York City. It's just what it's made to look like. That one's not too bad, but you know what? I want let's change our prompt a little bit here. A calm New York City street at night. And let's see what that gets us. Okay, that's more what I had in mind. That looks almost like somebody said, that looks horrible. Look at the building shapes. Again, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. That's probably the best. And sometimes you have to play with it and narrow down exactly what it is that you're looking for using the prompt. Using the prompt takes some getting used to and some practice to figure out how to get exactly what you're looking for out of it. Let's talk for a moment about art and AI. This is the part of the video that is just my opinion. Your opinion might be different, and that's okay. I can really understand many sides of this issue, and this just happens to be where I'm at with it right now. The basic question most people ask is it art if it was made by AI? To me, if it's a visual piece that evokes emotion, it's art, period. Happiness, sadness, loneliness, anger, joy, whatever emotion. But I think we need to narrow down the question a little bit. I think what a lot of people mean to ask is it your art if it was made by AI? One side will argue if it's your idea and you wrote the text that created it, then it's your art. Another will argue you didn't use any artistic skill, so it's not your art. And I come down kind of in the middle. If all you did was create the prompt and type it in, then no matter how much emotion it is evoking, I don't feel like it's your art. Now, if you used AI to generate a background and you used things to turn that into a great composite, then yes, it's your art. You just used, it's basically another stock image that you had to have that you generated instead of downloaded. And you used your skill to put the whole thing together. Even if most of the elements were generated by AI, I think it's art as long as there was some human skill attached to it. Let me show you an example. This is going to take a minute to load up, so I'll probably pause the recording here and come back as soon as we're done. So I'm back. Here's the example. This is a very large piece I did that's actually 7 Photoshop files brought together. There's a main file, and then each of the little girl pictures is a separate Photoshop file. Now the little girl I generated with AI. I prefer not to use real children in my work, saves on the hassles. Now each scene in her head was also generated by AI. I can't draw or paint that well. I can't do that well enough to create those things from scratch, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to photograph something similar to these to use. The textures are mine. I did the placement, the layer mask work, the lettering, pretty much everything else. Plus I had the idea. I'm comfortable with calling it my art. You may disagree, and that's okay. I don't tell people that I painted or drew this from scratch. I tell them exactly how I made it, so I'm not trying to pass it off as something it's not. I feel like that's the line in the sand, at least for me. Just be honest about stuff. Well, I'll get off my little soapbox. I hope you learned about some techniques and tools that can help you on your own artistic journey. If so, please think about liking, subscribing, or commenting. It really does help the channel. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.